is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
It was a struggle. It took me a while to understand this next shot mentality, right? So as a shooter, I would have a bad night. What's really what's a bad night? Because at this point in my career, I don't consider any night a bad night. You just go out there and hoop. And sometimes it goes in, sometimes the ball doesn't go in. As long as the process is the same, you've done everything you could.
Vlad Moldoveanu is a Romanian professional basketball player and a mental performance coach. He was born in Bucharest, Romania, and speaks fluently both English and Italian. Vlad played his college basketball at American University, where he was first-team All-Patriot League in both 2010 and 2011. Following his graduation, Vlad has been playing professionally in various countries across Europe. Vlad is also a driving force behind Train by HoopDrillz, which is an online basketball portal that links players to a curated collection of the best training videos on YouTube, organized into courses. Fall in love with basketball again this February with our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market. Be sure to check out their new Dr. Dish facility model with advanced analytics. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the HoopHeads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, HoopHeads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Rob Brost, head boys basketball coach at Bolingbrook High School in Illinois, and you're listening to the HoopHeads podcast.
If you're looking to improve your coaching, please consider joining the HoopHeads mentorship program. We believe that having a mentor is the best way to maximize your potential and become a transformational coach. By matching you up with one of our experienced mentors, you'll develop a one-on-one relationship that will help your coaching, your team, your program, and your mindset. The HoopHeads mentorship program delivers mentoring services to basketball coaches at all levels through our team of experienced head coaches. Find out more at hoopheadspod.com or shoot me an email directly, mike@hoopheadspod.com. Follow us on social media at HoopHeadsPod on Twitter and Instagram, and be sure to check out the HoopHeads Podcast Network for more great basketball content. Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. For a limited time, Fast Model is offering HoopHeads listeners 15% off Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Just use the code HHP15 at checkout to grab your discount, and you'll be on your way to more efficient game prep and improved communication with your team. Fast Model also has new coaching content every week on its blog, plus play and drill diagrams on its Playbank. Check out the links in the show notes for more. Fast Model Sports is the best in basketball. Grab a pen and paper before you listen to this episode with Vlad Moldoveanu, pro basketball player and mental performance coach. Hello and welcome to the HoopHeads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here without my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, but I am pleased to be joined by a former, current, I'm not sure how I would describe you in terms of being a part of the HoopHeads podcast network, but Vlad Moldoveanu, welcome to the HoopHeads pod.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll always be a part of the family. I can tell you that.
That's exactly.
I stepped away from it, but I'll always be a part of the family.
I agree. I could not agree more. We were just talking before the podcast that Vlad, if you're not aware, was the original creator of our Pistons podcast and Motor City Hoops, and now his co-host Bryce Simon has kind of taken that thing over and got it running. And first he went with SB Nation, and now he's with the Detroit Free Press, and he's taking that thing to a whole nother level. So Vlad and I were just talking about how excited we were for Bryce to be able to have that kind of success with the pod that started here on our meager little network. But nonetheless, Vlad is a professional basketball player. He played his college basketball at American University, and he's been playing overseas since the time that he graduated back in 2011. And he's also recently added being a mental performance coach to his list of accomplishments, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. But first, he wants to have an opportunity to talk to all of us about a new website that he's put together that's going to allow basketball players and coaches to have a tremendous resource that both players and coaches can utilize the platform in different ways. So I'm going to let Vlad take it from there and explain exactly what he has going on with Train by HoopDrillz.
Absolutely. So Train Basketball just it's been a baby of mine and my partners for quite some time now. And when we talk Train Basketball, we think we want people to think Netflix or Spotify for basketball training content, right? So we started Train because we believe the right coach teaching the right thing to a player at the right time, in the player's development, it can unlock their potential. Now, our mission is really to connect players from around the world with coaches around the world. From my experience playing, worldwide, basically, everybody teaches basketball different, and it's a beautiful thing to see it being taught different ways. If you think about it, when I stepped foot in the U.S., I had no contact at the age of 16 with the way U.S. coaches were teaching basketball. It was very different compared to what I was using in Romania. Then I came back overseas, and the way I was taught in high school and college was very different than my first Serbian coach I had. So what I found very interesting is, basketball being a worldwide game, you want different opinions, different workouts. And on top of that, you want to train with the best coaches as possible. And that's what we want to do with Train Basketball. We saw a gap in the marketplace for both players and coaches. On the player side, you can go to YouTube, right? And you can put a lot of effort in finding, the best content. And you got to deal with ads. The content isn't organized. And, the other option is to find a coach who's selling their own content on their own website. So to me, it was important that you're not limited to that one perspective. And you can also find stuff very easy, because I kept getting a message on social media a while back. Hey, how can I get better at shooting? How can I shoot like you? How can I do this? And I realized that a lot of kids, they might not have the opportunity to hire a personal trainer. They might not have the opportunity to work with really good coaches. So that's when kind of like things start ticking to me about Train. And then I pitched it to my partner, Rob, and then things just took off from there. And what we want to do is we want to help coaches and we want to help players. Coaches can, get a bigger audience, make some money off Train. And then, we want players to get better. We want them to have the best coaches available, teaching them, certain skills. So in order to do that, since we're launching very soon, we're paying coaches, they can generate revenue on Train. For a limited time, we're paying $50 up front for each course. They can leverage their following. Once you have a coach account on Train, you'll receive a unique referral link to share with your friends and followers, and anyone who signs up on Train and gets billed after the initial 7-day trial, they'll get $5 off it. And of course, there's a passive income from streaming. So that's the biggest content of the income. 30% of the subscription income on Train, goes into a coaching pool, and they share that. That share is on the coach's side, and based on how many minutes of their content is streamed. So that's as quick as I can be about Train. You can find more information. You can email us at train@hoopdrills.com, or you can hit us up on Instagram or GoTrainBB. So Go Train Basketball, Go Train BB. So that's the quickest thing, that I can make up for Train, because I'm super excited about it. I'm super excited about it because, I just want to help players get better. It's a passion of mine. Basketball is basically my life, and I just always look to help kids. Been doing it for quite some time now to help kids get from Romania to the U.S. on a high school scholarship. I started a basketball camp here in Romania. So this is also a piece of the puzzle that basketball is, that I'm trying to create with my life.
Absolutely. I think that it's clear, and I obviously know you a little bit better than our audience does at this point, but hopefully they'll know you a little bit better by the end of the podcast. But I know your passion that you have for the game. And when I look at what you guys are doing with Train, I think it's super interesting. I think you talk about a place that you can curate a lot of the best content. So not only are you curating the content yourself, but then, as you said, you're having coaches that can come on and be incentivized to bring their content to Train. And then once you have that in place, now if I'm a player, I can go and look and say, wow, I can learn from this coach or that coach, or I can look for a specific type of workout. Maybe I'm looking for ball handling, or maybe I'm looking for shooting, or maybe I want to learn from an NBA player, or maybe I want to learn from a high school coach that nobody's ever heard of. And as we all know, there are great basketball minds at every level of the game. I think that's what's always most interesting. We found that through the podcast. You can talk to a high school coach, you can talk to a Division I head coach, you can talk to an NBA head coach, and there's great ideas and great minds everywhere. And I think that's what you guys are trying to do, is put together all these great minds in one place that, as you said, can help kids to get better. As you guys are building this thing out, do you eventually see where it's going to be less of you and your team curating content from other places and more of it being contributions from coaches? Is that eventually where you see this thing settling out?
So the free version, the beta version that we've had out for quite some time, that's basically it, the curated content. But right now, the premium version is coming out with our own content. So that's stuff that you're not going to find anywhere else. That's stuff that coaches that have signed up to be with us are recording for us, specifically for us. So we're super excited about it. We're really excited because we really like the content. We really like the content we're getting. We're like the level of coaches that we're getting. Just to name a few, other than player development coaches in the U.S., we've had Spanish coaches, Serbian coaches, Romanian coaches, Spanish coaches that actually coach at the top level in Spain professional basketball. So we've we're very fortunate that we have these coaches on our platform and they're creating content for us. So from a player's standpoint, I think I'd be happy. I'd be happy if I was a player and I was trying to get better, and I'm gonna have the option to pay for a personal trainer. So this would be the next step where I can just train myself. You'd have what you need here. Like you said, if you're looking for ball handling, you can go search ball handling, and then you're going to find quite a few coaches and see which one fits best for what you're looking for. And that content you won't be able to find anywhere else.
The coaches that you guys have that are creating the video content for you, did you get those guys through personal relationships with you and your team, or how did you go about seeking out the guys that are creating content for you?
So, yes, some I kind of reached out to, the ones that I knew and I thought that, would be great on our platform. And then at some point, things kind of got bigger and, we hired someone to kind of do the scouting for us. We took the basketball team approach, and now we have somebody taking care of that. And then what I do is just, I share the same story that I share with you guys about Train, and if they're interested, they can do a deep dive into things with our video coordinator. He has a whole guideline put together. We really want this thing to take off, and we're doing our best to really make it like Netflix. Like I said, that's we're aiming for the stars. Like we've always had to. Our team has. All of us are basketball players. All of us are involved in the game some way, or we're not. So, it's been special. Just reach out to coach and telling the story and getting the positive feedback. Like, oh man, that's really cool. Like, I love when I hear that. Because that's what I thought too when we started it. So, it's pretty awesome.
We are recording on February 24th. What's the release date?
We're hoping early March.
Early March. All right. So that puts it. Probably by the time this episode airs, we will be right about at launch date, or it will be very, very soon. So make sure, if you're a player or you coach, make sure you go out and check out Train, get in contact with Vlad if you're interested in maybe contributing something to the platform. And I think it's a really exciting thing for both players and coaches that he's building. So make sure you check that out. All right. Now, We're going to jump from that back into your personal basketball journey and go back in time to when you're a kid growing up in Romania. Tell us how you get introduced to the game of basketball and what some of your earliest memories of the game are.
Oh, my earliest memories is basically when I didn't even walk yet. My mom was a professional basketball player, so I was on the road with her, and basically from the day I was born, I was on the road with her. She took me to away games. I remember being in training camps, hotel rooms when I was like 2 or 3. Like it's been the norm for me, the life. I never had to adjust to it, I guess. I was actually pretty adamant about when I was 6 years old to play soccer. I tried it 1 year. It just wasn't meant to be, I guess. And then I picked up a basketball officially, when I was about 7.5. That's when I kind of picked up basketball, and I was on a team. Until then, I was just playing by myself, basically, during my mom's practice and stuff like that.
So nothing else besides soccer in terms of other sports. It was always just basketball.
No, and that's the thing in Europe, too, that I don't know. I think the U.S. does it better, where kids are, multi-sport athletes. I think that develops, the child, but better overall as an athlete, as a future athlete, to put it that way. For me, it was always basketball, and now at 34, I can tell you that I have all the basketball injuries possible because I only play basketball, and it's been the same physical exertion on my body for 27, 28 years now.
What does basketball look like in Romania for a kid who's 7 or 8 years old that is on a team? Just explain maybe the Romanian basketball system from a youth standpoint.
Basically, you get on a team, mostly private teams now, I would say. And that's what you'd compare it to, I guess, an academy where you start basketball. Then, they play. The biggest competition is like a national, we call it baby basketball, mini basketball, which is kind of the beginning of it all, for these ages, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that will be the beginning stages where they have one big national tournament every summer. And then after that age, you start playing more of a league approach, if you think about it.
Did your mom like coaching you?
She's actually the president of the Basketball Federation right now, and she's never really coached me. I think that's a really tricky subject for every parent, coaching their young kids. I'm trying to kind of I'm finding it's hard. I'm finding it's hard on my own, with my kids. Fortunately, the oldest one really wants to be in the gym with me. But I understand that it's a thin line.
It is.
When you coach your own kids, it's a very thin line. And I'm trying to be mindful of that and understand how hard it was probably for her to, even just to give advice after the game. It's just, you have so much information you want to give as a professional, like she was, and even now. And, like I said, it's a thin line. You know how kids are. It's how it is, and I know how I was. So I'm trying to learn from that and take it on to with my own kids, and I'm trying to be good with it.
What's the hardest part for you as a parent? I'm curious because I can, after you share your piece, I'll share mine. Kind of just the way that I've tried to approach it with my own kids. Because I've shared a couple times on the podcast, but I think it's worth revisiting here after I hear kind of your perspective when you think about how much to push your kids, how much advice you give them. Just share sort of what your strategy's been.
It has to come from them. That's the first thing I always think about, because I know what drove me. It was my passion. It was my goals. You can't put a price on that. And when I was just in the U.S. for like 3 days, just this past weekend. That's all we had off. So I went, and the second day, my oldest was like, "Hey, let's get in the gym." I never ask him like, "Hey, let's go to the gym. We got to go to the gym." No. It has to come from them. To me, that's the first and most important thing. It has to be their passion. It cannot be yours. And then from there, I just try to also make it fun, given the age. My oldest son is 8. So I always try to make it fun when I work with him. As much as I want to teach him only pivoting and passing and the right form of shooting, you gotta give him the Steph treatment. Now it's like everything has to be Steph. Everything has to be a step back, a side step, a 3. So I'm trying to find it fun. And how can I make it fun for him at 8 without really being, boring? I think that's been the hardest for me when I work him out. But if it comes from him, he's, I feel like he guides the workout. I let him guide the workout as far as like I have some bullet points that I want to really teach. And then it's like, oh, I really want to get some shots up. And I'll throw in like a shooting drill, because I can see he's getting bored of the ball handling or the pivoting, the fundamentals of it. So I'll have to like throw in a curveball every now and then. But for me, I'm very fortunate because he really loves the game. He really loves the game. He wakes up at like 6:30. He watches like the game that happened the night before. So like he knows everything.
That's very cool. And I think you make what to me is the most important point that I always try to make with parents, which is it has to come from them. And ultimately, if it doesn't, if you as the parent are pushing and you want it more than they do for whatever reason, that ultimately leads to, I think, bad outcomes. It leads to bad outcomes for the kid as an athlete, but I also think it leads to bad outcomes in your relationship with your kid if you're always dragging them and making them do things that they don't want to do. Now, again, that doesn't mean you just let them sit on the couch and eat a bag of potato chips all day. There's obviously some pushing that has to be done. But I think if the passion comes from the kid, ultimately you're going to end up having more success. And I give this story all the time, but my son, who is now a high school sophomore, he's played since the time he was a little kid and always was a kid who loved being part of a team and was a really hard worker in practice and always tried his best, but wasn't wired the same way I was wired. I was wired, I'm sure, Vlad, just like you were, where you couldn't give me enough stuff to do. And I was on my driveway working on my game all the time when I was a little kid, and then going around to playgrounds and playing as I got older and just working on my game and trying to get better. And my son wasn't really wired that way. And in a lot of ways, as a dad, that was frustrating. It was very difficult sometimes not to drag him to the gym or say, hey, we got to go work out. And, you're going to be a kid that probably is going to have some ability and you're going to be pretty tall. So let's start working on it. And I just kept having to dial back. And I would ask and I would give him opportunities, but I never went over the edge. And that is hard to do. It is really, really hard, especially when you're somebody who's competitive and somebody who had such a good experience in the game of basketball, that trying to dial back like that is really difficult. And then, like I said, he's a sophomore now. And really, I would say probably after his 8th grade season, and even more so last year after his freshman year, that light bulb came on. And suddenly he wanted to get to the gym. And suddenly it wasn't me saying, hey, we got some opportunity here to go and shoot. It was him saying, hey, when are we gonna go today? Can we get this workout in? Can we do that? And once it came from him, the amount of improvement that he made was, not comparable at all to the type of player that he had been before. And I think you make, as I said, a great point that it has to come from them. And when it does, that's when you see him really working hard, because at that point, it's important to them. And it's not just important to you as the parent. And I think that's something for all parents to keep in mind without question. It's a fine line to walk, as you're finding with your kids. And, you just, as a parent, no matter what choices you make, right? It doesn't matter whether it's basketball or life. We're all flying by the seat of our pants trying to figure it out. And you just hope you're doing it right.
Oh, absolutely. And when I was thinking back too, I'm trying to always tell myself it's his story, it's not mine. And why I say this is because if like my biggest dream was always playing the NBA, and I was, I guess, as close as you can get. I went undrafted in 2011. Then I was getting ready to sign a training camp non-guaranteed deal with the Suns, and then the lockout happened, came to Europe, and just it didn't make sense anymore. once I get married and had kids, it just didn't make sense to go back and try to play G League or something like that. And when I hear him, like he wants to play in the NBA, that's his thing right now. And I love it. And I always have to take a step back and think like, okay, like I cannot live my dream through him, and he needs to, work for it. And I always tell him, I'm like, that's fine if you want to play in the NBA. It takes a lot of work to play in the NBA. Like, are you willing to put in the work? Like, just know, not now, but like for the future, you're gonna have to put in a lot of work to get the NBA. So like, I'm trying to give him like nuggets of this, and he goes back to passion. Like, okay, now his passion has to take over. He needs to understand that if he wants to make the NBA, he has to put a lot of work in. And now his passion can take over and take him to the gym a lot. And then it becomes to, okay, what do I do in that gym time? But before that, it has to, it's kind of like a train, it's just, you got to have the right pieces heading into a workout. And first of all, it has to come from the kid, the passion, and know what goals they're working for.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Everything goes a lot smoother when it's being driven by the kid as opposed to it's being driven by the parent. And unfortunately, in youth sports, so often what we see is that the parent is driving it. And it's not so much, I think, what I see, Vlad, is you have kids who they'd love to be on a soccer team, or they'd love to be on a basketball team, or they'd love to play flag football, or whatever the sport is. But they might want to play that game where they play once a week and they have one hour practice that's fun, versus the 8-year-old whose dad wants them to be in the NBA, and that kid's going to a trainer 3 days a week, and then they're going to speed, strength, and agility 4 days a week, and then they're playing 6 games in a tournament on the weekend. That's where I think it gets dangerous, where the parents are pushing that level of involvement on a kid who, quite frankly, isn't ready for that. And I think you have to eventually get to the point where, as a parent, you're able to step back and see, as you said, that it's not your story, it's the story of your child. And that story may be different. The one that they want to write may be entirely different than the one that you want to write. And I think as parents, it's not always easy, as you said, to walk that thin line. You have to be very self-aware about what you're doing. And even then, I can tell you from firsthand experience, even then, it is really, really hard not to push too much, and you got to be very careful when you do that.
Oh, absolutely. And let me give you a quick story about what we just went through, or we're going through right now with him, because he played baseball, rec league baseball, and then he was pretty good, natural at it. Never playing baseball before, really, in his life. He's tall, he's coordinated. He's just an athlete. Our oldest, and he started getting recruiting, like travel baseball, this and that. So we kind of chose like the highest travel baseball program possible around, and it was cool. And then during the winter, they had like 2 practices a week and no games. And I can tell you now, 2 or 3 months in, he's
he doesn't love baseball quite as much anymore.
He does, exactly. So like, we're like, okay, maybe we gotta take a step back. Like, we thought he wanted it, but at the same time, okay, we didn't understand, probably the commitment for him, and then he probably didn't understand that he's not gonna actually play a baseball game until April, and he's gonna keep working out. Like you said, they were doing like speed and agility, and they had two practices and no games. And now it's like, okay, this is not as much fun. So I can totally relate to all of that, because it's like, okay, like how do we deal with this and not throw too much at a kid, where it's more play and less, like organized practice all the time, where the way I see it is, how can I feed his passion, and then that will take over, and you can put it in a structured way where, they get better. And like you said, they can have the speed and agility. They can have, their own trainer and all that stuff. But, to me at age 7, 8, 9, 10, like, it's always just a game anyways. Like, if you love it, it's never, like Kobe was talking about pressure and stuff like that. It's never it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like work. I can honestly tell you that.
Exactly.
Until I guess when I got to my freshman year of college and I didn't play very much my freshman year and went through, and just like your son in baseball, we had games, but I didn't play very much in them. So it kind of felt like I didn't have any games, was going through a lot of practice. I think that's the first time for me that basketball ever felt at all like work. Up until through my high school career, basketball was never, any second that I spent on it was not, I never considered it work. It was just something that it was fun, where I was just, even if I was in a gym by myself working on my game, like that was not tedious. That was not me grinding through. That was me being out there going, man, I love this. Like, I want to get better. You can't give me enough. And I think too often we get kids to the point when they're 8, 9, 10 years old that youth sports becomes work for them instead of it being fun and it being a game. And look, there are some kids who are ready for some of the things that we just described, but I think there are many, many more that just are looking to play the game and have fun and eventually figure out where their talents and where their interests lie. And sometimes I think as parents, we see that we think there's only one pathway for them to get to whatever goal we as parents have for them, whether that's to be a high school player. Or most parents, I think, if you boil it down, they hope that their kid can get some kind of athletic scholarship. But you and I both know how difficult it is and how good you have to be in order to be able to have that become a reality in whatever sport it is that you're pursuing. And it's a really, really challenging thing for parents to navigate, because today, compared to, at least for me, when I think about what things were like here in the U.S. when I was growing up, you had lots and lots of kids that were multi-sport athletes. And oftentimes those kids could be the point guard on the basketball team and the quarterback on the football team and the shortstop on the baseball team. Well, now, because so many kids specialize so early, it's difficult. You can still play 3 sports, but it's really hard to be the best player in those sports, right? Because so many kids are doing into this specialized training. But I think what we do is we end up losing a lot of kids a lot earlier than we would have in a different way. And so the system, no matter what you do, it's never gonna be perfect. And I think, to go back to our sort of original premise of this conversation, is as a parent, you kind of have to walk that line and figure out what's best for your kid, for your family, for your situation. And you never know if you're doing it right, because you don't get to go back and do it over if it doesn't turn out the way that you hoped. So it's a challenge.
Absolutely. And, when I started this whole sports psychology journey, and before I even start working with players, I always intrigued by my own story. And like, when was I more motivated? When was I less motivated, and why? And, I was going through the whole motivational process. I was learning about like 3 theories, the theory of self-determination, the motivational channels, and all this stuff. And then it kind of hit me when we kind of went to like competitive or competence motivation. So when I got to it, I was like, oh man, this is it. And it's so simple that people overlook it. Like, when you're good at something, you want to keep working on it. You want to get better at it, right? And when you're kind of like bad at it, which is a negative result, you kind of just say, okay, that's enough. Like, I don't like it. It's not as much fun, right? And that's really how, when I think about basketball, it's how my career was too. It wasn't, I'm more energetic, I play better, I practice better, I work more when I have some kind of results. And it's the same with the kids too. So we want to make sure, as coaches, as parents, that we put them in a situation to succeed early in order to kind of grow that passion, grow the motivation, and that way they can get there, not just pushing them, oh, you got to keep working harder. Like, and, the kid doesn't have any wish to get better, is not very good at it at that point. And all it makes it do, it just makes the kid resentful of the parent or the coach or whatever it is. So to me, that was like, okay, how can I find like what he's good at and then kind of guide him? Because once he's good at it, he's going to work more at it. He's going to want to work more at it. And it's going to come from them at that point. So I feel like as a parent and as a coach, it's so important to, guide the kids, find what they're good at, So they get that little bit of success, and then at that point, it's going to be so much easier in the future, coaching them, parenting them, whatever sport or whatever area you're choosing.
It has to be fun, right? Because that's why, look, let's face it, that's why you picked up a ball. That's why I picked up a ball, was because, we were surrounded by, maybe we were kids, and your mom, obviously, and I remember my dad giving me a ball when I was young, but I kept doing it because it was fun. And if we take the fun away from young kids, they're going to eventually burn out, because you can only work so long and so hard on something that you don't have a love for, and that isn't, like I said, that's not fun. You're not going to do it very often. So thinking back to your own story as a player, when would you say the light came on for you in terms of wanting to really work and get better at it, where you took it maybe just a little bit more seriously than you did when you were really young? When did you say, hey, I really want to start? It's more than just fun to me now. Now I really want to start getting better. Do you remember that moment?
Well, I think it was pretty early, but then I would say the light came on. I guess I had more than one light, if I think about it. The first one, I think, when I got the U.S., before going to the U.S., I had some offers to stay in Europe at some pretty good European academies. High level. And I made a choice to go to the U.S., and I was like, okay, like, I kind of have this prospect, high prospect, whatever you want to call it, in Europe. I was under this umbrella, and then when I went to the U.S., I kind of just reset my mind. I think that was the first time I started playing mind games myself, and I still do that now as a player, which is it's just funny. But I was like, okay, I'm resetting everything. I'm nobody, no one. I'm stepping from the U.S. How can I become a Division I player? How can I become at least a 3-star recruit? And that's when kind of things start putting, I put together the pieces. And then I had the coaching staff in high school that was amazing, and they were, always pushing me too. And they were pushing me in such ways, like we just mentioned earlier, like, hey, do you want to come in and work out at 6 a.m.? Like, it wasn't, oh, you got to work out at 6 a.m. It was, you came all the way over here from Romania. Do you want to come work out at 6 a.m.? Do you want to get better? And when they were asking me that way, I was like, yeah, like, let me get better. And I'm sure there might have been other kids, like, in my situation, that were like, okay, no, like, I don't want to work out at 6 a.m. So it depends how you see it and how you perceive things. And that's kind of when the first light came on. And then I had a fairly successful high school career. Had Power 5 offers, this and that. And then I went to George Mason, and I had the same thing, early success. And then I had no success. And then I was like, okay, this is not fun for me. And it's not like the way out to transfer. But I was like, this is not what I'm looking for if I want to become a pro. I need this kind of role. I need this approach. And that's when the biggest light of my career came on, when I transferred. And I was out 12 months, and I was like, man, like, I averaged 2 points, 2 rebounds per game at George Mason. Like, I went to American, and, Coach Jeff Jones, who's now at ODU, he was like, okay, this is your team next year. But in order to be your team next year, you have to earn it starting today. And I just became a gym rat, like three times a day. In the morning, shooting, go practice with the team, go lift separately because I wasn't playing. And that's when everything kind of clicked for me at American, when, Coach Jones, he was, okay, like, I'm going to give you the free reign. Like, even in practice and scouting, if the best player on the other team was like shooting guard, I was like, all right, go be the shooting guard. He was like, go be the shooting guard. Go do your thing in practice. Like, be whoever you need to be for us in scouting to prepare us. And at the same time, get better. And that's when it kind of hit me. And that's when I hit the ground running, the next year. And early success, again, was very important to kind of feed that hunger, feed that passion, like things are working. So, but like I said, it was I had 2 lights go off. First time when I got to the U.S., and the second time when I kind of hit rock bottom after my freshman year at Mason.
Let's go back in time. I want to take one step back to how you got to the U.S. in the first place, and then we can dive into a little bit more of each of those specific situations, both high school and your 2 college experiences. How does a kid from Romania, what's the process for you coming over to attend high school in the U.S.? What does that look like? What did it look like for you?
First of all, I was blessed and lucky, I tell you that. So before I went to St. John's College High School in Washington, D.C., there was also a Romanian kid that attended St. John's, and one of his assistant coaches came to visit in the summer, and then somehow, some way, I got a workout that he saw me. The kid Andre, he was coming from a basketball family too, so like our families knew each other. So when the coach came to Romania, he put a workout in for me and some other guys. And, 2 of us got scholarships to go to the U.S. So like I said, it was more of a luck and blessed type thing than, really sending back then, CDs and all this stuff over the U.S. So it was a different era, and I got lucky. I think it's a lot easier now, to get over the U.S. Than it was, in 2004.
What was the cultural adjustment like?
Oh, huge. And here I'm talking about school. I'm talking about basketball. I'm talking about the fact that I lived like 2 hours away from school my first 6 months, because that's the only, host family they could find. So that was it, like waking up at like 4:30 a.m. To go to school, get back at like 9:30 p.m. and then sleep 5-6 hours and then get back in the car and drive back to school. On top of that, it was, the Catholic high school experience, the private school experience compared to Romania. We had a dress code and everything had to be done right, and it created a lot of discipline for me too. And again, I'm thankful for that, because going to a private school is very different. Just every assignment had to be on time. Everything, you couldn't miss classes. Everything was related. Your success on the court had to be related with, your success in the classroom within the school system. Then as far as like lifestyle and stuff, it was, I don't know if it's like, it was a culture shock, but at the same time, for me and the way I am, I thought it kind of just fit me like a glove. So other than really missing my family, I thought I was good. I really liked it, and it just fit me and my personality.
When did you start to realize that you might have a chance to achieve your dream of becoming a Division I player? Was that something that came pretty quickly after you got to the U.S., or did it take you a year or two to kind of get your bearings underneath you and really figure out what kind of player you could be?
It came pretty quickly, I think, also because it was that mirage back then where it's like I was 6'9" as a sophomore and I was a stretch 4 already. I wasn't shooting the ball very well, but I was shooting it. It was early because I guess because of my height and my ability to shoot the ball, it was like, okay, like that works for us. So I had smaller Division I schools recruiting me as early. I think I was like 3-4 months into my sophomore year.
What do you remember about those initial conversations with coaches? When the first coaches start calling you and talking to you, do you have any memories of maybe the first conversation or two you had with a college coach here in the States?
Well, I was very quiet because I don't feel my English was super fluent at that point, which was very hard for me in the beginning, especially in the school side and on the basketball side of things. So it was more like just listening and trying to kind of learn the ropes, because I had no idea what college basketball really was like until I got there. That's where I learned about college basketball, when I got to the U.S. Until then, I had not much idea of college athletics.
So what's the decision-making process like for you? What are you thinking about in terms of what you're looking for in a school? Are you thinking about the academic piece of it at all? Are you looking at coaching staffs? What ultimately were you hanging your hat on when it came to making a decision about where to attend college?
Well, what I would tell my kids or the
Well, what's the honest truth? So I'll tell you. So here, before you answer, I'll tell you my honest truth. So I have a daughter who's a senior, and she's trying to decide where she's going to go to school. And she's a kid who, in her entire schooling career, she's never had a B. So she's a complete straight A student from kindergarten through 12th grade, has never had a B. So basically, she could apply to pretty much any school around the country, and I'm guessing she'd probably have a pretty good chance of getting in. And I was a good student too. I think my GPA in high school was like a 3.6 or 3.7. So I was a good student. This was before weighted grades, where my daughter's GPA is like, I think she took one pottery class, so she doesn't have a 5, but she's whatever, 4.95 or something, whatever. So anyway, my point is, as I'm having these discussions with her about where to go to school and what are you looking for and this and that, she's like, well, what did you look for? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't care about anything except basketball. I mean, I looked at, hey, can I get a Division I scholarship? Oh, you're offering me a scholarship? Sure, that's where I'm going to go. And so when she starts talking about, or my wife's talking to her about academic programs and what does the campus look like and how many students are there and this, and I'm like, look, I can't really help you with any of that because it was completely irrelevant in my decision. Sounds like probably the same for you.
Yeah, it was all basketball oriented for me. Clearly, I was more worried about the basketball side of things. But again, what my process was, it wasn't perfect. I don't necessarily regret it, but I wish I was more patient. I wish I did my due diligence as far as like what 4-year would look like, not just 1 or 2. And it's hard as a kid because it's hard to see your success 3 years from now as a 17-year-old kid. You want it now. You want the success now, especially once you had it in high school. So okay, I'll tell you this story. So I was recruited by West Virginia, Coach Beeline, and he was my guy from day one. And I loved everything about him, from coaching to the man he was off the floor, the way we talked, the way we connected. And on my visit to West Virginia, I wanted to commit. I was like, it's my first school I've ever been to. I don't really care. Like, I feel connected with this coach. And then that's when it kind of struck me with the business side of things. He was like, well, I only have one scholarship left. I want you. You're the guy that I want. But Patrick Patterson, who's a local kid in West Virginia, hasn't committed yet. And it's coming from like the governor or the president of the school that we kind of have to wait for him to commit before signing you. Of course, one thing I tell all the kids I work with, check your ego at the door. Somebody should have smacked me on the head and told me that, please. Because I didn't check my ego at the door, and I was hurt. I had a big ego, and I was like, oh, you don't want me. And I was like, looking back, I'm like, okay, Patrick was a 5-star recruit. I was like 3.5. So I was like, okay, why is your ego in the way right now? Like the book, The Ego is the Enemy.
Great book, by the way. That's an incredible book. Anybody who hasn't read it, you got to get out there. Ryan Holiday, you got to get out and get Ego is the Enemy. Great book.
Absolutely. And my ego was definitely my enemy. And I was like, okay, like I wish somebody would check me, back then. It's like, okay, just be patient. Like, he didn't say he doesn't want you. He just said he can't do it right now. And then I kind of rushed it. After that, in a month, I committed to Mason because they're like super hot on me for a year now. And in my opinion, I should have taken my time more, because long term, I had my doubts about Mason and my fit within that system because of the style of play. So I was more worried about, at that point, only basketball as far as that goes. But it was just the fit basketball-wise that I would tell kids now. It's like, first of all, go where you really want it and where it makes sense for you as far as like the player you are right now and the system they run versus whatever is being sold. Because I think a lot of players like, oh, I want to go high. I want to go, Power 5, whatever. And they have no success. They end up transferring. And to me, I feel like it wasn't the level. To me, it was just more the fit that wasn't right. So just find the right fit, find the right people around you that can help you get better. If basketball is all you care about, just find those people that you're connected with. They're going to help you get better. And that and your parents know, and your high school coaches know that those people, they stick around and they want to be there. They want to help you be the player you envision to be. So I think that's what should have been. But for me, it was more like, I want to go to West Virginia. It didn't happen because if I would have waited, 2 more months, Patrick would have committed to Kentucky and it would have been a done deal. I was going to go to West Virginia. So, for me, it was my ego got in the way and I rushed it after that. I rushed it because, it was my senior year, it was November, and instead of just waiting and going to visit, because I should have went to Kentucky to visit when Tubby Smith was coaching, and I had quite a few options. Jamie Dixon was at Pittsburgh. He was looking at me and, we're talking. So it was just, for me, what I would tell kids is really, find your own path and make sure you have the right people in that coaching staff at that school to support you to have the success that you need or want on and off the floor.
I think it's hard as a kid, though, when you think about kids who are looking for, like, again, let's say that in your case, let's say you go to a Power 5 school and maybe you don't get on the floor as much, or you don't have as big of a role as you were eventually able to play when you were at American. And yet at the same time, it's hard for a kid. You said it, I would say it, like coming out of high school, like I thought I was pretty good. I remember looking at the guys that were signing scholarships before I eventually signed mine and like saying, I play against these guys all the time. Like I'm as good, if not better than them. And I think I should be playing at such and such a level. And look, I ended up having a really good career and it worked out for me, but there's lots of kids who are in my situation that are, I was certainly as a recruit, I was considered a very, very, very borderline Division I player. When I signed my letter of intent, that was the only Division I opportunity that I had. And I probably could have gone and played Division III and had a really, really great career. But nobody at that time could have told me that, hey, Division III might be a better fit for you, because I thought that I was a Division I player. And it's hard to argue with a 17 or 18-year-old kid. And I think you make a great point that wherever you go, you have to find the right people. And I think if you find the right people and you're connected with the right people, that whatever situation you're in, that you can, it's going to turn out well for you if the people that you have that are supporting you are on your side. But that's hard to do as a 17, 18-year-old kid, to make those kinds of decisions. We're a lot more equipped at our age today to be able to look at it objectively and figure it out, versus when you're 17 or 18, your ego and how good you think you are is probably pretty inflated, let's put it that way, especially in the age of social media.
Absolutely. And another thing, is just when you're a kid and it's like you said, it's like, do I want to go D1, D2, D3, whatever? First of all, see what role you really want. Like, what role you're going to be happy in. Because if you want to be a big fish in a small pond, which has worked out, for example, for me, I was super happy at American. Like, I loved it. I loved it because the type of person I was, the type of player I was, it all kind of went hand in hand. And, then we have these kids that commit, I just want to go to Duke, or it's just an example, but I want to go to Kansas, I want to go to Kentucky, and they go, and then after 1 year, they transfer right out because they had no chance of, no business of being there, and they could have been, I don't know, a superstar at like a small D1 school, or it's the same story with a small D1 player that could have won D2 and been an All-American, right? So to me, just find the right fit for you, the right level for you. And, the people that are going to support you reach your goals too, because it goes hand in hand, the team success with your success. It all has to go hand in hand for that player to be happy, to understand that, to enjoy this, because at the end of the day, only a handful of players get turned pro. So if you're going to live those best years of your life in sports, you want to make sure you're happy at the end of the day, because you don't get a do-over.
Yeah, you don't get to do it again, that's for sure. And no matter, you can tell that to a young person a million times as a guy my age, and it still doesn't really, it just doesn't sink in, because it doesn't mean anything to a kid. It wouldn't have meant anything to me. If somebody would have said that to me when I was a high school player or a college player, it would have meant nothing. And yet now you realize, as you get older, how fast things go and just how fleeting opportunities that can be. And if you're in a program where it's not the right fit, or you're with a coach that doesn't appreciate your particular skill level, or maybe it's just a style of play that doesn't fit your game, you can lose a year, 2 years, 3 years, and those years you just don't get them back. And you only have, as you know, the clock is ticking all the time on your playing career. My playing career ticked, and I got done with school, and my playing career went from I'm playing to all of a sudden at 22, a thing that I had done for my entire life, suddenly I wasn't doing it anymore, at least not on the same level. I mean, obviously I was still playing, but not in any way, shape, or form like it was as a high school or a college player. And you've been fortunate enough to go on and continue and be able to play beyond college and play a lot of years professionally. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. But it's still, that clock's ticking. I guess unless you're LeBron, right? It seems like his clock, I'm not sure, that thing just keeps ticking. I'm not sure when it's gonna stop ticking. It's just it's incredible. But other than LeBron, for the rest of us, that clock stops ticking. You only get so many years. You only get so many opportunities. And I think kids don't always realize that. And especially now, because of the transfer portal, it makes it so easy to jump from one place to another and this and that I think you made a great point about taking your time and really looking at the situation and trying to figure out what situation's best. Because look, yeah, it's easier to transfer now than it's ever been, but I still think if you can find the right place out of the gate, you're probably going to be better off.
Absolutely. And throw another story on this. When I was transferring, I was looking at American, of course. I was looking at Lehigh. I was looking at Boston. And then all of a sudden, NC State came in out of nowhere. Okay, so they offered me. And I went with my gut. That time I went with my gut. And I was like, I got to go to American. Like, I'm a DC guy. If you ask me, how do I play? I play like a DC guy, if you ask me. Like, even people that watch me play overseas and stuff, like they'll never understand me. I'm not playing wise, mentally. I'm not. I'm a DC guy. Like, I grew up in DC, basically. That's why I kind of shaped my personality on the court, off the floor. So I play different. I talk trash. I do all the crazy stuff. So when it came down to it, I was like, okay, I have a chance to go from not really playing at George Mason, 10 minutes a game, 11 minutes a game my sophomore year. I was like, to go to NC State. Really interesting. And that's when they had J.J. Hickson. So I was like, oh, that's a great pairing for you. And that's when the light bulb came on. It's like, wait, I've heard this story before. I'm going there to be a complimentary guy to someone that might be gone in 1 year. And what happens after? Right. I'm the guy that's going to help JJ and the team have success. But what happens to me after JJ goes to the NBA after 1 year? So then I was like, okay, you know what? Like, my gut is telling me, go to American. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And it was. And it was the smallest school, basically, I was recruiting back then. And I'm so fortunate because it was just an amazing story for me after that. But again, I could have went with a big fish again. I was like, oh, NC State, go ACC, that's it. Go to NC State right now. Yeah, and my gut was like, no, like, check your ego. I learned to check my ego that time. And I'm like, don't let it fool you. Don't let it fool you just because it's something that looks amazing. It just might not be the right fit for you. and you might have to pass on it. And I learned that the second time around compared to the first time.
Yeah, if you had that same choice coming out of high school, I'm guessing you probably would have went to NC State.
I probably would have went to NC State, but honestly, there are so many teams that are like, so many colleges that are like a better fit for me. Like thinking back, for example, Tony Shaver was at William & Mary, and his system was beautiful for me. But I wasn't. I was like, okay, so if I'm going to go to the CAA where Mason is, I was like, I got to go to school that went to the Final Four. I can go to William & Mary. They never been to the NCAA tournament at that point. Again, it was my ego that I had to learn how to check, and it was my story, and I had to learn the hard way, I guess.
Talk to me a little bit about the transition from college basketball to pro basketball. You talked a little bit about your near miss with the Suns and the lockout and how that ended up sending you over to Europe, and then it didn't make sense for you to come back to the U.S. to give it another shot with the NBA. So just talk about how your pro career gets started over in Europe, and then we can dive into just some details about your playing career.
Absolutely. So I went to play in Italy, top level team, Benetton Treviso. You know, if you think Benetton, I think Tony Kukoc, Andrea Bargnani, and many are. Mike D'Antoni coaching it. So it was really high level European basketball. I was very fortunate for that first contract. As a rookie, that's very rare. Now, as far as the first year playing wise, very unstable, roller coaster. And I would say maybe up until a while back, I would have been like, okay, it was the coach's fault. It was my fault. And what I learned the last few years of my life is just take ownership of everything. And I understand that was my fault. It was my fault because I just wasn't ready. I wasn't ready mentally for it. I wasn't ready for the business side of things. I wasn't ready when I was told that I was going to start, that I didn't start. When I was told that I was going to play 20 minutes a game, that I didn't play 20 minutes a game. When I was told that I was going to take 12 shots a game, I didn't take 12 shots a game. And I let all that affect me. So that's why I have to take ownership of that first year and really be like, okay, like that's just like I take ownership of my success. I have to take ownership of my failures too. And it was a rough patch for me because coming from a top 20 Division I scorer, coming off the bench in Italy, then starting about mid-season, then going back to the bench. I don't think I scored double digits from February, March, April. I don't think I scored double digits more than one time. And it was a struggle for me. It was a struggle because I didn't adjust quick enough. It took me 1 year to adjust, basically.
Did that shake your confidence at all, or did you just kind of figure out, hey, I gotta take a different approach?
No, my confidence comes from my preparation. I never let one affect the other because I really believe in working hard, putting time in the gym, and that doesn't mean I'm a bad player. It means that I just didn't do a good job succeeding within the boundaries and within the role I had. I think that's very different than me being a bad player. I knew my worth, I knew my value, but I just had to find the right environment, the right team for me my second year. That was crucial that summer, that I was just jump on. Like, it's not just about the money. It's not just about the level, but the money once you turn pro is very, very important, of course. So it's like, how do I rebuild this, after a missed year?
What does that process look like? So you've played in several different countries with a lot of different teams. So when you're thinking about, okay, here's my year ends with team X and country Y, and now I've got to go to a new place, or I'm going to look for a better opportunity. What does that process look like from the end of one season to the beginning of the next season in terms of getting there, getting a contract signed, figuring out where you want to go?
Oh, man, it's like anxiety provoking and everything. The mental side of things, it's everything you don't want it to be. But it's the nature of European basketball. You're basically unemployed every May, every June, unless you sign a long-term deal. And that came with a lot of anxiety, honestly, because I didn't know where my next job would come or when. I knew kind of what I wanted from the next job. my role, what I want my role to be. But that whole summer, I waited up until, I would say, late August to sign. And it was kind of nerve-wracking because a lot of teams were in training camp already. Most of European teams start training camp early August, first 2 weeks of August. And I was with the national team back then, and I was still not signed. And I think I was out of my friends, I was probably the only one that was not signed. And I just learned to have patience on that time to live with a uncomfortable situation, with anxiety, and be like, okay, I need the situation to be right for me to be successful. And if I'm just going to pull the trigger on any good money deal, I might just miss that opportunity for the future to set myself up better. So, it's nerve-wracking. You think about 3-4 months where you're just unemployed, no income coming in, and you just strain. And that's where the difference, when I was talking about my son working out right now for 4 or 5 months without a game, that's kind of the life of a, European pro, where they play 9-10 months a year. They have 2-3 months to kind of, maybe 4, depending on the league, to just work on their game. So for me, it was just, okay, let me work on my game, let me figure it out, and let my agent, do his job and find me the teams that are right fit for me.
What was your process for finding an agent that you could trust?
Oh man, I went through all that too. That I wish I could talk more about, and I wish I could talk to more college kids about it, or even Europeans, because again, I went at that time. I went with a really big agency, and I learned that again the big agency, they have the big players, so like, I like more of a personal approach. Maybe some players talk to their agents twice a year. But for example, my agent now, Tangram Sports, Stefan Miller, he's been my agent for roughly 6 years, I think, 7 years. And we're more friends. Like, we talk about soccer, we talk about any basketball stuff, and very rarely we actually talk about my contracts or how I play. At this point, like, we're more friends. Like, he's more of a friend to me now, and he keeps it real with me. It's like, why do you want this type of money when you don't play worth of it? And I appreciate that more than, I'm gonna get you. What do you want? 300? Yeah, I'll get you 300, and then the agent comes in and gets you 100. And don't promise me someday you can't deliver. And I've learned that a lot of agents do that, just to sign a player. And I think that the rules are changing right now within FIBA, where actually the players are going to end up paying the agent, not the club. So a lot of change around that, which is very necessary, if you ask me. But yeah, it was quite a roller coaster because I didn't know, So I was like, oh my God, they have Steph Curry? Oh yeah. That's it. That sounds good to me. Oh, great. But wait, I'm not Steph, Vlad, wake up. But they get you with the pitch. It's just like any business, when they come and it's a marketing pitch, right? And they do all these videos, and they show you all this stuff, all the clients, all they did for them, and it's like, okay, you have to realize if it's a big company, usually those are like the 1%. It's like the NBAers, so it's like,
you want that personal touch, right? You want somebody that is going to care about you and be invested in you and your career, and not just have you as another number that they can put up on a board somewhere where they don't really know you, or they don't invest in your career, because clearly you're going to need somebody to advocate for you and to be able to get you the right deal, as you said, to be able to find something that's going to set you up so that you can play not just 1 year, but you can play multiple years like you've been able to do over the course of your career. And I think that there's something to be said for that personal touch and really having a connection. And the fact that you talk about being friends with your agent, to me, look, that's the kind of situation that you want. That, yeah, it's a business relationship, but you want somebody that cares about you and is concerned about your future.
Absolutely. And they have to, a few things that I think an agent really needs is, one, to understand the level of basketball, really, really understand it. I mean, know all the European leagues, all the leagues that he's representing players in. to really understand the level. 2, to always be on the side of the player. Because I've had issues where my money was extremely late. Like we're talking like 1 year late. Yeah.
I believe it. Trust me, I believe it.
Yeah. I think in Poland, when I left Poland, I got 5 salaries. So I got paid 5 months out of 10. And then the next 5 months, I got them like 12 months after. So, but you want the agent to always be on your side. So usually the bigger companies, what I've seen, so I want to speak from my own personal stories, not anybody else's. I don't want to put, a bad rep on any agency, but the bigger agencies, they kind of tend to, okay, like, you don't like this player? Oh, you want to cut him? Sure, we'll find him a new team, and then we'll get you another player. Just make sure you sign a player from us.
Right.
And I don't like that approach. I think you got to be players first. You represent the player, not the club at the end of the day. But a lot of the bigger agencies are more worried about, their bottom end than
keeping the clubs happy, right?
Yeah, keeping the clubs happy, keeping the money coming in, so that's fine. But yeah, actually, I was in a special situation with a Turkish club where I think if I would have fired my agent, I would have been able to sign with that team. But I would never done it. I would never done it because I knew the reason why this club was kind of running away from me or my agent per se at that time was more of an issue of him defending a player and his financial rights. So to me, I couldn't do it. I would never do that. So yeah, it's very complicated situation, I would say, with agents because there's not a lot of information out there sometimes about the FIBA rules and how it works when players sign a contract with agents and all this stuff. And especially for the Americans coming out of college, I think it's very difficult, because they get these pitches I told you about and they sign with an agent and they never find them a team and then nothing happens, And kids either retire early for no reason or they just don't do a good job taking care of these players.
Yeah, as a young guy, it's tough, right? It's tough to figure out and be able to navigate. And it's just a world that you've never been in before as a 22-year-old who's graduated from school and trying to figure out. And unless you have somebody there that you can trust, that you can figure out, maybe your family helps you and do some research and talk to other players, maybe you can get yourself in the right situation. But I can see where it'd be real easy to get yourself into the wrong situation with an agency and end up short-circuiting your career where things kind of just die on the vine and you can't get what you need. And that's unfortunate. And obviously you have to do your research and you have to try to figure out who's going to be the right fit for you and then trust that your research is good. And then obviously the longer that you've been in it, you've been able to figure out and navigate and understand what it is that you're looking for in an agent and what you need them to do for you. And it sounds like you've landed in the right place. So that's been a positive. When you think about where you've been, what's your favorite city you've played in?
Oh, that's hard. So many good cities. I would say Treviso in Italy. That was my first year. It was absolutely amazing city, amazing fans. And then I think second would be Tallinn, Estonia. It's funny now everything going on with Russia and stuff. Going to Estonia, I wasn't sure what to expect, and it was amazing. It was absolutely beautiful, amazing Baltic country. Really good people, and the city was just fun. You could find anything you need. Everybody spoke English, and it was a super easy transition. So I would say between those two, between Treviso and Tallinn. So
very cool as an opportunity to be a young kid and be able to go and live in different places and just expand your horizons. And I think that's one of the things that when I think about not getting an opportunity to do that after I graduated from school, I think probably, I missed out on some basketball probably, but I think just missing out on the travel piece of it and just being able to see other places and travel around and see different cultures and eat different food and interact with different people. I think for anybody that had to be a tremendous opportunity to grow and learn and just experience these other cultures that without the game of basketball, you never would have had an opportunity to explore them in any way.
And funny you say that. Actually, my first year, I went to Rome twice, and I didn't even see anything because I was just like, okay, I got to get my rest. I have a
Right, I hear you.
I have a game. I'm not doing this. I'm not here to on vacation. And to this day, I haven't seen Rome, and I played in Italy 1 year. So, yeah, I took a different approach later on in my life, but I wish I would have enjoyed it more when I was younger too. It's like travel a little bit more instead of like, oh man, I gotta really I have a day off, so I'm like resting today. I'm not traveling anywhere, stuff like that. So I wish I would have done a little more of that, enjoying it, than just thinking okay, I'm just staying in the house.
It's just like we talked about before, right? When you're young, that seems like I got forever and a day to get to Rome.
Yeah, exactly.
And so who cares?
Now I'm 34. I'm like, wait, I gotta get to Rome.
Right. Exactly. It's funny how life works. All right. Before we dive into the mental performance stuff, which I want to get to here before we wrap up, I want to ask you, this is a standard question for anybody who's played European basketball. What's your craziest European basketball story? I know you have one. You can keep it one that you can share. So keep it PG-13, let's say.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm at the point in my career that I don't care if I put people on blast, so it's okay. Quite a few, honestly, that I have that. But to me, just the craziest stories in general. Why I'm saying this is that I would have to send letters to clubs to get paid, and I had quite a few situations where it was like that. Like the money keeps coming late, and the only way they would pay me is if my agent sends a letter saying, "Hey, you guys are past the 30 days. Please pay him soon, or he's gonna leave the team, or he's not gonna practice." And if I ever stopped practicing, I was the bad guy,
right?
But I was like 30 some days behind with a paycheck. So to me, that's the crazy part about it, because like we literally had to send like a letter, and then within 2 days you have the money. So I'm like, why didn't you just pay me to begin with? Why do I have to send a letter every month to beg for my money? Like I work for it, like we signed a contract. Like, why do we have to do all this? And to me, that's just a crazy story. And then other one, I was in Italy, and the fans came to practice, to support us. Because we're having a rough patch during the season, and the fans came and they sang the whole practice, and it was awesome. We had
cool.
Open practice, and they were just supporting us. But I also heard stories when the situation is not supporting, and they come and just cuss you out and all this stuff. So I was fortunate to be on the good side.
Yeah, that sounds like you definitely want to be on the good side. It's one thing to get heckled in a game, man, but if you're getting heckled in practice by your own fans, that's not good. That's not a good situation.
Yeah, I mean, it comes to the pressure of professional sports in Europe, so it's okay and it's not okay. It's like one of those things that is what it is.
The passion is good and bad, right?
Exactly. Yep, that's it.
All right, let's talk mental performance. First of all, tell me a little bit about exactly what it is that you're doing, what kind of players you're working with, how you're finding those clients, and then maybe we talk a little bit about some of the things that you're working with players on.
Absolutely. So let me start. Where I find the clients, I don't find them; they find me. Really, whoever wants to work with me, I'm open to it if it's the right fit. Usually, because I've had a mental performance coach for 6 years out of my 11 years. That's where I developed my passion for it, and that's where I learned the most about myself, I would say, as a player and as a person. So, what it is just working on your mental game, to put in a short way, and that comes from let's say focus, to motivational stuff that we just talked about, to how to deal with situations during a game. Control what you can control is one of my mantras. It's getting frustrated, for example, with a decision of a referee or a coach, and it doesn't help you ever. And a lot of players, tend to have that negative reaction. Or it's like, why am I on the bench right now? And I found myself actually talking to my guys right now as a captain of the team. And somebody comes to the bench like, oh, why do you take me out? And I was like, why are you worried about why I take you out? Just sit down, take a breather. You're going to go back in. Just focus on the now. instead of just, this guy didn't pass me the ball and stuff like that. So overall, what I work on with my clients on the mental side of the game, I create a workbook that we go from, goal setting to, what is really a practice mindset versus a performance mindset. We work on how to focus, how to visualize, how to self-talk, how to use self-talk to your advantage, not to your disadvantage. And little details like this that really, really make a difference in a player's life. And I think it actually make a difference in the coach's life too, as I'm debating going to coaching in the near future. I really find it very, very helpful.
All right, give me an example of how you would try to turn around a player who has negative self-talk. What kind of things would you encourage them to do to turn off that negative voice in their head and spin it positive? How do you get a player to do that? Or what are some exercises that maybe you have them work on to get them to get out of that negative self-talk?
Well, first, I can be a good example of it, actually. As a shooter, I was always worried about percentages, right? And when I start working on myself, it was a struggle. It took me a while to understand this next shot mentality, right? So as a shooter, I would have a bad night. What's a bad night? Because at this point in my career, I don't consider any night a bad night. You just go out there and hoop. And sometimes the ball goes in, sometimes the ball doesn't go in. As long as the process is the same, you've done everything you could. Actually, the fact that the ball goes in the basket or not, I would say it's not something that you can control. If the process was the same, your shot looked the same every single time, you were focused, you were sharp, then you just let the ball go. And, sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't. That's the way I see it right now at this point in my career. So, for example, I had a lot of self-talk, a lot of negative self-talk when I was a little bit younger because of the shooting part. So let's say I would just, shoot bad from the field, especially three-point shooting. And, I'll go 0 for 5 on one night. And what I found out is after my first or second miss, I was always in my own head somewhere or not. I was like, you got to make it, Vlad. You got to make your next shot. Like putting pressure on myself, or, I would just try to find excuses, right? And then I kind of flipped it. So my self-talk started in the pregame, where I was like, okay, I keep telling myself, I'm the best shooter in the gym. I'm the best shooter in the gym. I'm the best shooter in the gym. I kept repeating stuff like that to myself. Then once it became in the game, I used something that my mental coach preached to me. He said, you know what? When you make it, just say, a lot of basketball players say, my bad. How often do you hear that from a basketball player? You put your finger up, my bad. And he was like, okay, when you make a shot, just say, my good. And it was an interesting concept, and I started using it in practice. And then
That's cool. I never heard that before.
And it became a mantra for me. And then what I tell really my younger athletes, to find a reset point, because negative thoughts and positive thoughts, you just want to keep everything in check, be balanced. That's the whole idea of it. And for example, for me is the rim. And I find I look at the rim, whether I missed a shot and maybe I'm a free throw line, I missed the first free throw, and I look at the rim and I just say reset to myself. And I know reset for me, it means just like clear out your mind. You're done. Next, like now. You're living the present, living the now. The most important shot you're going to take is the next one. That's it. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you're 1 for 10 from the free throw line or whatever. And with my younger athletes, I feel that works very well. They find a point in the gym where they look at for 1 second, they say reset, and they can finally reset themselves and get themselves out of that negative emotion, that negative self-talk. So those two options are and have been good for me and good for my athletes. So I would suggest actually if you do have a shooter, just use my good, my bad, and reset, or next play. The next play, you make a mistake and you don't want to stay in the past. Whereas a turnover, a missed shot, I always say next play. Very often when I have a bad play, I say next play in my head.
I think that's a really good way to be able to train yourself to focus on the here and now, which anything that you read from a mental performance standpoint, that you want to get into that flow state, right? Where you're not worried about what happened before. You're not worried about what's going to happen in the future. You're just completely focused on what you're doing in the moment. And you kind of let that natural instinct, that muscle memory, that relying on, you talked about it earlier, that the reason why you're confident is because of your preparation, right? So you don't want your brain to get in the way of the preparation that you've done from a physical standpoint so that you can always be and play at your best. In your experience thus far working with players, is it easier or harder to work with a player who is more experienced or less experienced? In other words, if you have a player who's less experienced, and that could mean a younger player or maybe just a player who's not at as high of a level, they're maybe more of a blank slate versus a player who's, let's say, been a college player, a professional player who has more experience but also brings more baggage. Do you think it's easier to work with one or the other, or is that really not?
Honestly, I haven't worked with any pros other than myself. Okay. I'm a work in progress. But most of my kids are 14 to 18 right now.
Okay.
And they have different battles than what I would have or that I think a pro would have. Because I hate to say it, but the highlight culture, the stuff that you talked about, the social media, you know how much pressure it puts on them? I had a kid tell me one time, so he's playing at youth academy, and then, the coach from the next level up is coming to watch us play, this and that. And he was like a nervous wreck. I was like, okay, let's kind of break it down, see what you can control, what you cannot control, what are the pros and cons and this and that. And then I'm like, so why are you really nervous? And he's like, well, if I play bad, what are my friends going to say? And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, we're talking this whole time. Like, you started telling me that, you're a nervous wreck because, this coach is coming and this and that. And it's like, yeah, but if I get blocked, and it gets on Instagram, and I was like, really? This is the issue? Like, and I find that very often. It happens very often, whereas they're literally scared to make a play because it might end up on the wrong side of their social media. Whenever they play friends or whenever they play people that follow each other, it's unbelievable to me. I never thought of it until now, honestly. Even as a pro, I never thought of it. Okay, I got dunked on. Guess what? Okay, he posted it. Amazing. Tag me into it if you want. Good play. What do you want me to do? It's you can't live in that culture where it's one play and it's one post and you're like, oh, I got a great post for Instagram, great, and you played horrible. So what's more important, the 200 likes you got on Instagram, or the fact that your team lost, or that you had 20 and 10? Let's find the balance of it all. Whereas kids nowadays, to me, that's the most frustrating part. As a mental performance coach, they let this control them. They let this dictate the way they play, the way they approach things. How do I look doing this move? I was like, I don't care how you look doing this move. If it's the right pass, or make that one. Don't make the one behind the back just because, it's a highlight.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that so much of their life now is lived through the phone, even in terms of just how they communicate in normal life. Forget about on the sports side of it, but just person to person, they're on their phones, and that's how they're communicating. So you have that piece of it. And then just as an adult, it's easy to scroll through whatever social media you want and look at people's photos and look at people's video clips and be like, wow, this person has a great life, or this person has this, or wow, it's just look at this vacation that they're on, and all these different things that we as adults can do. And yet we know that it's just one singular snapshot of, it's not a real true vision of anyone's life. And for kids, when they see that highlight, or they're comparing themselves, or I think about, Vlad, do you have kids that, like, think about the number of kids that are posting the offers that they get on Twitter. Well, like when I was a kid, like I knew that there were some guys around me in my local area that were going to schools, but I didn't have any idea outside of a 10-mile radius or a 20-mile radius around my house. I had no idea what anybody else was doing, or how many kids were signing here or going there or announcing they were doing that. Now you're a kid. I mean, you can see every single thing. So not only are you seeing like the 4 kids in your area that got a Division I scholarship, but you're seeing all 500 kids across the country that are announcing on Twitter that they got a Division I scholarship, and you're trying to compare yourself to that. And it's just not, it can't be healthy. And I know I've talked to several college coaches on the podcast about how they handle social media and just trying to get their players to understand that you can use it as a tool, and there's a lot of good things about it, but certainly it can be a really difficult thing for people to deal with. And I think it's interesting when I think mental performance coach, social media is not the first thing that popped into my head. And yet hearing you say that, I can definitely see where for a 13 to 18-year-old basketball player, that could become a really, really huge issue that could impact the way they play on the floor. I can see it.
Well, you talked about, right, like I guess one of my goals is to get them to play in that zone, right, in the flow that you talked about. And like you said it, to get them there, you got to get the brain out of it. And all this stuff is puts, it puts so much pressure on them. And what I tell my guys is really simple. The more you master the technique, right, the dribbling, the ball handling, the shooting, all this stuff, you give yourself more space, more room in the brain, to work with the other stuff, to see more stuff on the floor, to get yourself to the zone. Because if I gotta think always about like, how do I dribble now, because my ball handling is not up to par, right? Let's say I'm a point guard, I get pressure full court, and ball handling is so. Well, first of all, I can't get you to any flow because you're going to be worried about dribbling the ball. Yep. I can't get you to see everything on the floor and play at your best because you're going to be worried about dribbling the ball. You're going to be looking like, oh, where's the ball? Oh, pressure me. By the time you get to offense, it's hard to like start any offense. So the first thing I really tell them is, just master technique, master the skills, the actual physical skills that require playing basketball. And then once we do that, once stuff becomes easy for you, then we kind of just, we take off some pressure off the brain where they don't have to think about it. Like somebody reaches full court, I go between my legs, change direction, I beat him. I don't have to think about every single dribble. So when we start like that, it gives me a lot more room to work with and easier to get them to a flow state of mind. But the problem that, like I told you, I faced is, what does it look like after that for them? It's what is the frustration that for kids, it's a lot of frustration where something doesn't work out. They just, like we talked about earlier, patience, stuff like this. They don't have it. I didn't have it. So that's the first thing is like they get frustrated with a bad play. Then they get frustrated with others that they cannot control. And at the end, to me, that's the cherry. The cherry at the top is just this highlight culture where, all they think about is, how can I make the flashy play, not the right basketball play? How can I do this and that? And as a mental coach, I only have so much power in that because it does come from the coaching staff too. And I have players that, not going to give out names, but their coaching staff is the one that's promoting highlight culture, right?
Yep.
And that's to me, that's a bigger problem because then I'm fighting a battle against a coaching staff that basically chooses their minutes, and the player can only work so much. And you have the coaching staff that's like, okay, well, if you guys promote that, if after a game, you as a coach, you post your player stats, or you post some highlights of your team playing. It's all highlights of blocks, dunks, and nothing that's team related. It's on like a one-man show type stuff, and I've seen that, unfortunately. That to me, that I have an issue with that. But again, it's not my business to bring it up to a coaching staff.
That's what you're going to get, right? If that's what you are praising, if that's what gets put out into the public eye, then that's a message. It may not be an intentional message that the coaching staff is trying to send out, but it certainly is a message that kids get and kids see, and they look at it and, hey, if this is what the coach is promoting, then this is what I need to do. And I think when you go to a game and you'll see a kid cross over another kid, and the kid will, even if they just stumble, like that gets the biggest cheer from crowds today. Hey, forget about good basketball, forget about winning basketball. People get the most excited about somebody crossing somebody up and making them stumble or fall. That's what brings the biggest cheers from crowds. And I personally never understand it, but then all you got to do is go on social media and look at what are the videos that people watch, and they like seeing people break ankles and having somebody fall down. Those are the videos that get lots of likes, and so it's understandable.
When you mentioned that, okay, maybe I show my age right now, but I remember Aaron Kraft at Ohio State, and he's had a fairly successful career overseas too, and he was the guy that just guarded 94 feet, right? Like he was just baseline to baseline, and I can guarantee you that we'll find a clip of him falling at some point, right? In those 4 years at Ohio State, and that is literally 0.1% of possessions that he had at Ohio State where he just fell one time, and he literally pressured your guard for 4 years. Like,
exactly.
So how many turnovers has he caused? How many deflection has he had? And you get that one highlight, right? Like a big man gets dunked on, and how many shots does he contest? How many shots does he alter? Okay, how many blocks does he get? But like, it will end up like he'll get dunked on, and unfortunately, that's the world that we live in now. And it's like you said, it's a matter of how coaches use that, and they can use it to their advantage or disadvantage, or depending on the players they want to get, either college, high school, because now recruiting is high school too, so it's a whole different ball game.
That it is. Basketball is certainly a lot different than it was in the past, and there's a lot of positives and there's a lot of challenges. And I think when you talk about mental performance, it's an area that in the last 5 to 10 years has become more and more and more important when you talk about a player's career, from a player who's just a high school player to a college player to, I'm sure, a pro player, as you described with yourself, having a mental performance coach yourself for the past 6 years. I can only think that has been invaluable to you as a player, because it's something that back 20 or 30 years ago, nobody worried about it. Nobody thought about it. It wasn't something that anybody even considered. And the game is in a better place because we do have people who understand how important your mind is in performing well. And I think it's really important. I think it's something that I'm sure you're going to be able to continue to grow and do as you transition out of being a player. And no matter where your coaching career ends up taking you, I think the mental performance piece will always be a part of what you do.
Oh, absolutely. It'll be a huge part. To me, I just start with that. Even if I get into like actual basketball coaching full time, it will be a huge part of it, a huge piece of it, because I think that's where you become successful, really. Because when I was in high school, another thing that stuck with me when my high school coach said, it was like mental is to physical like 4:1. And I'll tell you this, from a 6'9" guy that had maybe 4 dunks in his 11-year pro career. It was more mental. It was all mental for me. I can't, it just, I literally had, I think 4 dunks or 4 or 5 dunks in an 11-year pro career, and I had 2 in college. So,
well, I'm a 6'3" guy who I've probably had, I never dunked ever in a game, and I probably have dunked in my entire life probably 10 times, but on probably a rim that wasn't 10 feet. It was probably 95 degrees in the gym. I probably barely fudged it in. So I can certainly relate to the fact that you can be a pretty good basketball player and not be able to dunk. Now, don't get me wrong. I would have loved to have been able to jump like Rex Chapman and be able to do all that stuff. But that was not something that I was gifted with. So you have to figure out different ways to do it right and get it done.
No, absolutely. And to me, that's why I say, like, the mental part was huge for me. Either becoming the student of a game, either learning how to deal with, anxiety facing more athletic players, either, where is my self-talk, whether, I was learning how to visualize before games, learning how breathing helps either energize me or calm me down. All these tools that just help you. And I'm a big fan of just the 1%. How can I get 1% better? How can I get you 1% better? Because in time that adds up.
It certainly does. There's no question about that. All right, we are blowing past an hour and a half here. So before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to, again, share how people can reach out to you, share where they can find out more about you, give us the Train website again, and just share how people can find out and connect with you, and then I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
Absolutely. So for me, it's Vlad Moldoveanu 9 on any social media. If you look for the spelling, you probably gotta find it in the.
We'll definitely have that. We'll definitely have that on the show notes, so it'll be good. We'll get it out there for people.
You can find it VladMoldoveanu.com. That's my website, and for Train is GoTrainBasketball.com. We're super excited about that platform. And if you ever got any questions, can just reach out to me about social media, on social media, and, I'll respond as quickly as possible and help anybody out. If I'm like an open book, if somebody needs help, and if I can help, I would love to, especially, since the basketball world to me it's a tight community, it's a tight community, and we all want to grow the game the right way.
It absolutely is, and I'm always amazed by the willingness of guys like yourself and other guests we've had on the pod to share, and just the ball is amazing when it comes to making connections. And you said it earlier in the pod about just basketball being your life and how important it's been to you, and I certainly feel the same way. And the podcast has just given us a platform to be able to connect with great people who are doing great things in the game of basketball like yourself. And we're so thankful that, A, you're a part of the HoopHeadz family and that you were willing to jump on with us tonight. And we talked for an hour and 40 minutes, and I feel like we could easily double this and keep talking. And there's just a ton more to continue to discuss. So we'll have to have you jump back on again at some point. But thank you for your time tonight, Vlad. Really appreciate it. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the HoopHeadz podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.